Okay, sir. Now we can.
A very good afternoon to all the participants and speaker. Welcome to the day 5, second session of this short-term training program on emerging nanoscale devices, circuits and its applications. For this session, we have Dr. Ambika Prasad Shah with us. He will deliver a talk on the topic reliability and security issue in VLSI circuits and systems. Before I invite Dr. Ambika Shah Prasad for the talk, let me give a brief introduction of him. Dr. Ambika Prasad Shah is currently working as Assistant Professor in Electrical Engineering Department, Indian Institute of Technology, Jammu. He received PhD degree from Electrical Engineering Department, Indian Institute of Technology, Indore. Before joining IIT Jammu, Dr. Shah worked as a postdoctoral fellow at the Institute of Microelectronics, TU Vienna, Austria. He is also the recipient of Young Scientist Award from MP Council of Science and Technology, Bhopal, MP. He has authored more than 55 research papers in peer-reviewed international journals and conferences. He is a senior member of IEEE, lifetime member of ISTE, ISCA, IEI, and IAENG, and associate member of UACEE. His current research interest includes reliability analysis of digital circuits, design for reliability, fault-tolerant circuits, reliability modeling, low-power, high-performance circuit designs, and IoT security circuits. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Ambika Prasad Shah for the talk. Sir, thank you so much for accepting the invitation for this short-term training program. I hope everyone attending this session will get benefited from your expert lecture. Over to you, sir.
Okay, so thank you so much for
Thank
the
you, sir.
nice introduction, and thank you for the inviting me for the talk in this short-term training program. So let me share my screen, then I will start doing the things, right? So. I think you may be able to see.
Sir, you just, yes, we can see your
Yes, sir. Yes,
screen.
sir. We can see.
Fine. So thank you so much for inviting me for the talk. So as we know that the theme of this short-term training program is related to the emerging nanoscale devices, circuits, and its applications. So by considering the same theme, what was given, I started means the title of the talk I just given. Let me. Okay, there is some issues here. So, yeah, perfect. So the based on the theme of this talk, I started floating a topic related to the reliability and the security issues in VLSI circuit and systems. Because see, if we are talking about the deep submicron technologies, like if you have gone through a scale technology for the up to the 7 nanometer, 5 nanometer, or if you are talking about 3 nanometer technology node for the recent transistors. So with the advancement in the technology, definitely we will get some of the benefit, like the faster performance might be, we can put more number of transistors on a chip, but at the same time, we need to face with some of the reliability concerns as well. So with the scaling down the technology, with the scale down the technologies, we must have, we need to consider the reliability concerns as well. And there are several reliability concerns, and that need to consider if we are really interested to design reliable circuits, reliable systems, or any kind of the devices. Okay. Apart from the reliability, security becomes also a severe challenge, especially if I'm talking about the secure data transmission. Like if we are doing day by day, we are doing some transaction through the bank and everywhere here and there. So our data that is to be floated through the internet, that must be secure. So if we have designed some of the circuits, some of the chip or some of the systems, that must be secure as well. And there are many hackers who can trap your information at any stages of time, either during the transmission of the data, at the chip level, at the network level. So that can be trapped. So we need to consider the security concern as well in the circuits or systems. So this is the main theme of this talk. And by considering this, let us move ahead with the content, what I'm going to cover in this particular talk. I will start with the introduction, what basic introduction about the reliability and the security is. Then I will talk about several reliability concerns, especially at the deep submicron technologies that consist of the PVT variations. Most of the people may be aware of this one. The next one is the bias temperature instability, hot carrier injection, time-dependent dielectric breakdowns. So if we talk about the second, third, and fourth kind of reliability issues like BTI, SCI, and time-dependent dielectric breakdowns, these kind of variabilities issues considered under the time-dependent parameters. Like this kind of failure or this kind of reliability concerns depends on the time, depends on the environmental conditions like variation in the temperature. So suppose if I have a chip, I have a circuit, or I have any of devices. So at t is equal to 0, if I am operating that device or circuit, in that case the performance of that device will be different. But if we are operating that device or that circuit for the longer duration of time, might be the performance start degrading. And because this degradation is due to time, that is why we are calling these kind of variations or this kind of reliability concerns as a time dependent concerns. Okay, so I will briefly talk about all these things, and commonly we call them the aging effects. Okay, and apart from these PVT variations and the aging effects, one more reliability concern is like the soft error. Especially this kind of problem happens if we are using our chip or our circuit in the harsh environment. Like if I'm using our chip for the space applications, might be there may be some presence of high energy particles like alpha particle, some of the neutrons, some of the proton may be there, and those high energy particle can, and that may alter the performance of those chips. Okay, so we need to take care of these soft error issues as well. Okay, so oh sorry, I didn't show you here. Actually, I'm not able to switch here. Let me check what is the problem with my system. Okay, so yeah. Now, if I'm considering the hardware security, so this is all about the reliability issues. Now let us talk about the hardware security issues. The first one is the physically unclonable function. We will talk about what this function is, what is the importance of this physically unclonable function. Then we will talk about the two random number generator and how it can be implemented. What is the importance of this TRNG and how it can enhance the security of any hardware or any of the chip. And then we will talk about some counterfeit electronic devices, and we will talk about how we can avoid this counterfeiting. And then the last security issue will be the hardware Trojan. Okay. Briefly, I will discuss all these things so that you will be familiar about the problems associated with the circuits and the systems. And then I will talk about what are the various reliability research challenges nowadays, what kind of research we can do if we are considering the research, reliability research. And similarly, I will talk about what kind of different gap areas related to the hardware security. And I will try to give you some brief idea about or some of the directions where the people can start working towards the hardware security side. So I will try to give some of the ideas. So I will request you to, if you have any doubt in any of the slide, definitely you can interrupt me in between and I will try to answer your question immediately. But at the end, I will try to come up with some of the research dimensions might be that may be useful to you, and you can proceed with your research. Okay, so this is all about the content which I am going to cover. Now let us start with the introduction. So as we know that the technology is scaling down, the IC feature size has been driven into many physical limitations. So it is not only about the scaling down the physical parameter or the supply voltage or some of the doping and other things. But because of that, we may face some of the problems like the oxide thickness is also reduced by approximately 30% in each next technology generation. And if the oxide thickness is reduced by 30%, might be after a certain time, there may be some probability that some of the charged particles they can trap from the bulk semiconductor material into the gate side. Okay, so that may create some of the problem. So this is the reason with the scaling down the technology, reliability and the variability becomes the biggest design challenge, especially at the deep submicron technologies. Okay, so in order to keep the technology scaling down, two things are we need to consider mainly. The first one is the excessive leakage power, and the second one is the device and the circuit reliability. And apart from these things, we also need to consider the security, as well as if we are talking about the current scenario, right? So security can also be one of the severe concern, especially at the deep submicron technologies. So basically, the PVT variations are the serious issues in the scale technologies. And if we are talking about the time-dependent degradations, as I already told you, the BTI, SCI, and TDDBI, TDDB are the temporal degradations mechanisms which can affect the performance of the device or the circuit or the systems. Okay. Apart from these things, software is also one of the issues. Yeah, one by one I will explain briefly, and you may be able to differentiate between all these things and what are the reasons behind this. Okay. Before going into the detail of all the reliability and the security concerns, basically some of the reliability and the security concern, if we are considering the reliability and the security, we can find some of the hot spot or some of the things where we need to consider both reliability as well as security. So see, in general practice, we need a higher reliability. We also need a secure kind of systems. Okay, but if I am considering the reliability, by considering some of the physical parameters, might be the security may not be that much good, and the vice versa. But we need to find some hot spot or some of the common thing that can be utilized for the reliability as well as for the better security. So I will briefly talk about how it can be explored in the common term. So here we have some figure that gives you the circuit and system resilience. Basically, the resilience is divided into three categories. First category belongs to the integrity. Second one is the availability, and the third one is the confidability. If you consider the integrity and the availability, these two terms are commonly considered as a reliability concerns. And if we consider all these three terms like integrity, availability, and the confidentiality, in that case, the security concern is to be considered. Okay. So there are many things. If I am talking about the only integrity, like the integrity is decided by how much interference is there, internal interference is there, how much process variation is there. These all parameter decides the integrity of that system or that circuit. Similarly, environmental noise also decide some of integrity of the system. But these are the part of the reliability term. Whereas on the same side, like integrity, we can have something like hardware trapping. This is also the part of the integrity of the system, but that belongs to the security concern of that chip. Okay, so these are some of the things which we need to classify between the security and the reliability, and there are something common that need to be considered as a reliability and the security both. Okay, so in detail we will discuss one by one whatever the term I have written in the red and yellow boxes, that will be discussed in detail. Okay, so and later on we will try to find out some of the common thing that can be utilized for the better security and the better reliabilities. Okay, now let us start with the reliability. So basically the reliabilities are divided into two categories. The first one is the time zero, and the second one is time dependent. Time zero is also known as the process variations or spatial variations. That is classified into two categories. The first one is local and the second one is global variation. That local variation can be at the front end or it can be at the back end, and if you are talking about the front edge side, there could be three kind of the variations that could be RDF, LER, LWR, and OTV. RDF means random dopant fluctuations. What is that? I will explain. LER and LWR means line edge roughness, line width roughness. I will explain you in the detail. And the last one is the OTV, oxide thickness variation. So these all are the parameters which decides the during the fabrication of the during fabrication of the device. Okay, and these kind of problems comes into the picture. If you are talking about the global variation, that can be considered lot to lot, wafer to wafer, and dia to dia. So this is all about the time zero. And similarly, if we talk about the time dependent one, that is classified into two categories. The first one is temporal one, which we call it the aging effect. And the second one is the environmental variations. So see, because of the environmental variations, there could be some fluctuation in the supply voltage. There could be some fluctuation in the operating temperature of the chip, and there could be some effect of high energy particle in the chip, and that can affect the performance of that circuit. Okay, so this all comes under the environmental variations. If you are talking about the temporal degradation, I have already discussed these things like BTI, SCI, and TDDD are considered to be the temporal degradations. Yes, of course, these three phenomena are fall in the front end categories. And similarly, if you are talking about the back end, there is some one phenomena or the temporal phenomena that we call electromigration. Okay, so let us discuss one by one. Okay, because these all things are well known, so I will quickly go through all these things, and I will put more emphasis on the BTI side, on the security side, so that you will be able to get some of the idea, you will be able to get some research domain, research directions for your research purpose. Okay, so let me briefly explain what this global or the inter-die variations are. Basically, the process variation are categorized in two categories. The first one is global one, and the second one is the local one. If you're talking about the intra-die, so suppose if we have a wafer, so let us start from the right side. So on a single, if we have cut it down, a many wafer from a single lot, might be each individual lot can have the different variations, because so and this kind of variation we call the inter-die. Similarly, there could be different variations on the different wafer, even though we have cut it down from the same lot. So this kind of variation we call like inter-die variation. And if we are considering like on a single wafer, if we have a very n number of dias, so like this one is the dia. So in that case, what is the meaning of this? See, in a single wafer, if we have many dia, might be each dia can have a different property. There may be some different variations. So these kind of variations are known as inter-dia variations. But if on a single dia, if the individual transistors are behaving differently, so we call those kind of variations as intra-die variations. Okay, so this is the difference between inter-die and intra-die variations. Okay, so the next one is basically to analyze the inter-die variations, we need to consider the different process corners, and then we call them like slow process corner, SS, FF, FS, SF, and TT. So these all are like slow, fast, slow, fast, and fast. The important thing is, if we are operating our circuit for the normal condition, in that case, we need to consider the typical one. Okay, but if I have to check our design for the speed specification, in that case, what I need to consider? I need to consider the slow process corner, and if our circuit is performing well at this process corner, we can say that our circuit will perform better in all the conditions if we are targeting, and if we are targeting like different process corners. So for analyzing the speed specification, we need to consider the slow process corners. Why we are considering the slow? Why we are calling this slow process corner? Because the threshold voltage of both the transistor at slow process corners are higher at the higher side, And if the threshold voltage is at the higher side, definitely it will give you some better controllability in the leakage power, but at the same time you need to pay in terms of the delay. So higher threshold voltage will give you the higher delay, and if our circuit is performing well at SS, then we can say that the circuit will perform in all other extreme conditions. Similarly, if I have to check the power specification of our circuit, in that case I need to consider this fast process corners, and this fast process corners gives you the fast performance, but it will give you some higher power dissipation. So if our chip is performing well and the power dissipation from that chip is under our criteria, whatever we have given, or whatever the range we have given for the optimum power dissipation for a chip, and if it is falling under that category, then we can say that the chip will perform better for all other conditions. So these all are the things, all are the process corners that we need to consider. Yeah, because see, because SS, TT, and FF, these all are symmetrically changing the threshold voltage for both the transistors, like NMOS and PMOS transistors. So these three process corners are known as symmetrical process corners, whereas slow fast and the fast slow process corners are asymmetrical one, because one of the transistors is slow and another transistor is fast. So because of that, we are calling them asymmetrical process corners. Okay. Now let us talk about the local variation. So first one is oxide thickness variation. So as I already told you in the beginning of the slide, with the scaling down the technology, the oxide thickness is becoming 30%, or reducing 30% by each technology generation, right? So what happens? If the oxide thickness is very less, so what happens might be the thickness of oxide may be some atomic layer. Okay, so during the whole channel length, if the oxide thickness is not uniform throughout the channel, in that case there may be some tunneling of charge carrier, and this kind of variation, because we are dealing with at the atomic layer, a 10% variation in the thickness might be give you a huge difference in the variability. Okay, so this oxide thickness comes into the, like suppose we have the oxide thickness of, let us assume 20 nanometer, and if there is some tolerance of 1%, so might be the thickness could be 18 nanometer, or it could be something like 22 nanometer. But if you have the oxide thickness of only 2 nanometer, and if there is some variation of 1 nanometer, so might be at some places the oxide thickness will be only 1 nanometer, and at some places might be it is 3 nanometer, which is a huge difference. Okay, so this kind of problem are the oxide thickness variations, and that can create the problem in the performance of the circuit or the devices. Okay, the second one is the random dopant fluctuations. So what we do, we generally dope the impurities for the better controllability of the devices. But what happens with the scale down the technology, the number of dopants are also decreases. Okay, so if the number of dopants are decreases, and if there is, so initially let us assume at the older technology, for example, I am using 1000 dopant atoms per unit area. Okay, now if I'm considering the latest technology generation, and for that technology generation, if I am doping 100 atoms, so in that case what will happen? If 10% variation in the number of dopant will be at 1001, so might be that may not affect that much as compared to the lower technology generation. So this also create the problem, and that becomes the serious concern, especially the process variation. This will fall under the process variations. So this is all about the random dopant fluctuations. If you're talking about the line edge roughness and line width roughness, what is that? The meaning of line edge roughness means what? Up to 113 nanometer technology generation, we generally use 193 nanometer. I'm not able to write perfectly, so let me say it. Up to 130 nanometer technology, we generally use 190 nanometer wavelength of light for the lithography purpose. Okay, but even after reducing the technology generation, still we are using that wavelength of light for the lithography process. So up to 130, during the lithography, there was no problem, there was no variation. But if we are reducing the technology generation, in that case, while lithography, there may be some variation in the edges at the width of the channel, width of the source and drain terminals. So what happens? Ideally, we are expecting our design should be something like that. But because of the mismatch in the wavelength of light, might be the expected gate would not be something like that. Might be there may be some change in the edges. Okay, and because of this change in the edges, there may be some variability issues. Okay, so if you see this figure number, second figure and third figure, both have the roughness variation, right? So, but if you can see here, in the third figure, even though the width is common, width is same throughout this channel length, but the edges are not perfect. They have some rough edges. So here we can say the width are same, but edges are not uniform. So we call them line edge roughness. And here, if you see the second figure, in the second figure, we can see the edges are not the uniform and the width is also not uniform. So we call them line width roughness because the width is not common, which is not same for entire gate length. So this kind of problems are known as line edge roughness. So because of that, there may be some change in the device properties. Okay. Apart from this process variation, we have some supply voltage variations and the temperature variation. This is well-known term, so I'm not talking too much time. So if the supply voltage is increasing, the critical delay is also going to decrease. But there may be certain reasons, certain supply voltage that can perform well. Like, so suppose if I'm reducing the supply voltage below the threshold, in that case, or below the threshold voltage of the circuit, I'm not talking about a threshold voltage of transistor. Threshold voltage of circuit means the minimum voltage required to operate that circuit perfectly. So that we are calling it the minimum operating voltage. If we are reducing our supply voltage below that minimum operating voltage, might be that circuit may fail. Okay, so this variation, so suppose if I am operating our chip near threshold voltage, and if there is some variation in the supply voltage, might be at some instant of time our system may get failed. So we need to design our circuit which should be tolerant to the supply voltage variations. Similarly, if you are talking about the temperature variation, what is that? There could be a two kind of temperature variation. The first temperature variation is the global temperature variation, and the second kind of temperature variation is known as the local temperature variation. Okay, so what is the meaning of this one? So suppose I have kept our chip on sunlight and some heat is coming. In that case, the entire chip will, the temperature of the entire chip will be increased. Might be the performance of all the sections or all the segment inside that chip that may affect. Okay, but what happens if I'm operating our chip? Might be some of the module in that chip may have more activity. Okay, if they have more activity than the other one, so suppose I have one adder circuit and I have one multiplier circuit. For example, the multiplier circuit is here and the adder circuit is here. And I may need adder for many times or all the times, and the frequency of using multiplier is less. In that case, because there is more activity, more switching in this part, might be there may be some rise because there are some transistors, might be there will be power dissipation, and because of that power dissipation due to switching may create some local increment in the temperature. And if there is some local increment in the temperature, there may be the performance degradation on the selected blocks, not in all the chips. So these kind of problems are known as the local temperature variations. Okay, so we need to consider our design which should be tolerant to the temperature variation. Okay, So if the workload is going to be increased, switching activity will also increase, and the power dissipation will increase. That will generate some heat, and the temperature at that certain region may also increase. Okay, so these are some of the temperature variation effect on the chip. This is summary of PVT variations. So if you are talking about the process variations, it's and that effect on the delay. So if there is no process variations, that is the best case. Similarly, if you are operating at the higher supply voltages, might be the delay will be less. And similarly, if you are if the operating temperature is less, the delay will be less one. So you need to optimize the process variations, voltage, and the temperature to have the optimum conditions where you can operate your device or your system in the optimum way. Okay, so these all are the things which are which belongs to the PVT variations. So this is all about you must be knowing about the things. Now let me consider the bias temperature instability. That is very important thing. Okay, so what is the bias temperature instability? The bias temperature instability, I just told you, this is a time dependent degradation, and that is caused due to dangling bond defect at Si-SiO2 interface. What that dangling bond is? Dangling bond means if we have some silicon substrate, and if I just want to make some SiO2 layer on that top of that, so what we need to do? We need to oxidize it, okay, so that we can have the SiO2 layer on that. So the oxidation can be of two types. The first one is the wet oxidation. Second one is the dry oxidation. But the performance of the wet oxidation is somewhat better than the dry oxidation. In that case, might be we are using the H2O, water. Okay. So what will happen while making the SiO2? There may be some hydrogen atom that may also loosely bonded with the silicon. Okay, there may be some bond between the hydrogen and the silicon, and these bonds are known as the dangling bond. They are loosely bound, and they have the less bounding than the SiO2, silicon and oxygen. Okay, so what happens if we are operating our devices? In that case, with respect to time, with respect to change in the temperature, these dangling bond can break, and they can tunnel into the oxide, and because of this tunneling, they may change the parameter or the performance parameter of the devices. Okay, so this is the problem, especially if you are talking about the deep submicron technology, because the oxide thickness is very less. Might be they can tunnel and they can reach at the gate terminal. Okay, so what happens? This dangling bond defects, they can increase the threshold voltage of both the NMOS and PMOS transistors. So the BTI can happen in both NMOS and the PMOS devices. So and in summary, there are two types of the BTI. One is the positive BTI and the second one is the negative BTI. Okay, so if we combine all these possibilities, we can have four possibilities: BTI in the NMOS, NBTI in the NMOS, PBTI in NMOS, NBTI in NMOS, PBTI in PMOS, and NBTI in NMOS. So we can have the four different components. Okay, so we call them NBTI in PMOS, NBTI in NMOS, PBTI in PMOS, and PBTI in NMOS. Out of all these four components, the NBTI in PMOS transistor is the dominating one, and that can affect the device more as compared to all other three components. Okay, and because of that, most of the researchers generally consider the NBTI effects in the PMOS transistor. Definitely, the PBTI in NMOS and all other components can also affect the performance of devices, but the NBTI in PMOS transistor is more severe. So generally, people consider this one. Okay, and this becomes the limiting factor, especially if the oxide thickness is less than 2 nanometer technology. Now, if I just told you like NBTI is the more severe, so let us talk about what this NBTI is. NBTI in PMOS transistor is. There are two reasons for the NBTI. The first one is the negative gate to source voltage, And the second reason is the elevated temperature. What does it mean? It means that if I'm talking about the NBTI in PMOS transistor, so the voltages between the gate and the source is negative. Negative means what? The gate terminal is connected to the 0 voltage and the source terminal is connected to the VDD. In that case, VGS will become minus VDD. And that we are calling the negative gate supply voltage. Let me say it again what I'm saying. Negative gate supply means if the gate terminal of the PMOS transistor is connected to the ground and the source terminal is connected to the VDD, in that case, the effective VGS voltage will be minus VDD. And that minus VDD we are calling negative gate supply voltage. So if in any of the circuit in the PMOS transistor, if the conditions are like this, like negative VGS, then the NBTI phenomena can happen in the circuit. This is the first reason. Second reason is if I'm operating our device at the elevated temperature, elevated means at the higher temperature, then the probability of the dangling board defects will be more as compared to the lower temperature. So if the magnitude of this gate source voltage is higher, then the NBTI effect will be higher. And if the temperature is higher, then the effect of NBTI will be higher. So these two are the reason behind this. And I already told you what happens. What they do, they just break the SiH bond and they can turn it into the oxide, and they can leave some trap behind it, and that may shift the threshold voltage of the devices. Okay. Yeah, this is the phenomena how it happens. So here we have the gate voltage is the 0 volt, and let us assume this is the source voltage. In that case, this is the VDD. So there is a minus negative VGS, and because of that, there may be some defects at SiO2 interface, and there may be some hydrogen part. They can tunnel into the oxide, and they may create some problem. One very important thing is the phenomena at the time when the gate to source voltage is negative, we call them NBTI stress. Whereas at the same time, the beauty of NBTI is if we change the polarity, like the gate voltage is VDD and the source voltage becomes the grounded, in that case, this NBTI stress can be recovered. So some of the hydrogen particles which were tunneled, that can be recovered, and might be the change in the threshold voltage can be recovered back. But the problem is all the dangling bonds cannot be recovered. So at each stress time, there may be some trapping of the charge particle, and they may have changed some threshold voltages. And during the recovery phase, 100% trapped charge particle cannot be recovered. So there may be some permanent trap and there may be some temporary trap. So the temporary trap can be recovered, and they will effectively reduce the threshold voltage, but the permanent trap we cannot be recovered effectively increases the threshold voltage for all the times. Okay, permanently it will increase the threshold voltage. So we combinedly we call them the stress recovery patterns. Okay, so see here, the NBTI is of two types. If we are constantly applying the static or the negative gate to source voltage, only stress condition is there. In that case, we can call them the static NBTI. But if the stress and recovery both is happening, we can call them the dynamic NBTI. So see, as I already told you, in the dynamic NBTI, we can have the stress and recovery both. So the effective change in the threshold voltage will be less in the dynamic NBTI as compared to the static NBTI. So this is really very important to understand what is the magnitude of threshold voltage degradation due to static NBTI and due to dynamic NBTI. So let us discuss the pictorially what happens with the dynamic NBTI. So suppose if the device is under stress, so this pink color indicates the stress condition. So at that time, the threshold voltage will keep on increasing. But if we have applied the positive gate to source voltage, the device will be in the recovery mode, and might be the degradation in the threshold voltage or the increment in the threshold voltage can be recovered back, but that cannot be recovered 100%. I already told you what is the reason behind this. So at all the time, stress and recovery will happen, and all the time there may be some permanent trap that cannot be recovered, and effectively the threshold voltage increases with respect to time, and might be after certain time it can fail our system. Okay, so this is the impact of the dynamic NBTI in the circuit. Okay, because see, why we generally need to consider the dynamic NBTI, because in the real life, in the real example, if you see, all the chips have some activity, so we cannot keep all the devices at some certain voltage level all the time. There may be some change in the potential. So always we need to consider the dynamic NBTI, because this is the practical example, not the theoretical one. So theoretically, if you are considering, or the worst case, if I want to consider the worst case effect of NBTI, in that case I need to consider the static one, but the practical one is the dynamic one. Okay, but yes, one question may come from your side, like what happens. So see, in the right hand circuit, I just explained you there could be some stress, there could be some recovery, and I have considered the duty cycle is equal to 50%, right? So the stress time and the recovery time is equal, but we can also design a circuit having the different duty cycles, like the stress time is more and the recovery time is less. In that case, the effectively the change in the threshold voltage may be different. Okay, I will explain this one. So here it is. So if you are talking about the NBTI, that depends on the many parameter. The first one is the oxide thickness. If the oxide thickness is higher, then the breakdown, maybe it will take more time to break down. Okay, if the supply voltage is higher, the faster will be the breakdown. If the operating temperature is higher, then the faster breakdown will be there. If the time period is higher, means if you are putting stress for the longer time period, then the probability of breakdown will be higher. So these are something which we need to consider, which are the major parameters that decides the NBTI degradations. Okay, so those are the oxide thickness, supply voltage, operating temperature, stress time, doping, and other things. So many parameters that decides the effective time at which the device will fail or device will become in the breakdown conditions. Okay, so this is all about the NBTI. The one very important thing is for each next technology generation, the threshold voltage degradation is incremented by the 4%. What does it mean? It means that suppose I am considering the 45 nanometer technology generation, and after 3 years of stress, if there is a 10% change in the threshold voltage, and at the same time, if I am using 32 nanometer technology generation, that change in the threshold voltage might be 14%. So 4% additional degradation will be there for the lower technology generation. So this is the reason at the scale technology, the effect of NBTI becomes more severe. Okay, so this is the thing which we need to consider. One very important thing, if I'm talking about the effect of NBTIs, okay, so in that case, the effect could be like it can increase the threshold voltage. Okay, one very important thing which we can observe from this conclusion is that if the threshold voltage of any transistor is increasing, what does it mean? It means that we know that if we are increasing the threshold voltage, the power dissipation can be reduced. Means that the effective leakage current flowing through the device will also reduce. Okay, so someone may ask, like, this NBTI degradation is the benefit. We can consider it as a benefit. So yes, this is true. Many researchers consider this NBTI effect as a benefit if their concern is the power dissipation.
Sir, a small doubt, sir.
Yeah, please.
Sir, if we increase the threshold voltage, the power supply we need to increase, no, sir. Overdrive voltage decreases. So that will be one of the disadvantages, no, sir.
Yeah, see, yeah, definitely, that's true. But what happens, suppose I am keeping the threshold, I am keeping the supply voltage as it is. And now if I am changing the threshold voltage, In that condition, there may be some change in the drain current. There may be change in the leakage current. So I'm not considering the change in the supply voltage as well. I'm just considering because see, suppose I have one inverter circuit, and in an inverter circuit, suppose I have applied 1 volt supply voltage, and let us consider the threshold voltage of both the transistors is around 0.3 volt. Okay, but due to NBTI effect, the threshold voltage of PMOS transistor might be that is increased by 10%. Let us assume it is 0.35 volt. So what will happen if the threshold voltage of that device increases, even though there is no change in the supply voltage? So what that will do? That will effectively reduce the current flow through that one. So this was my concern. Is your you got the answer or slide?
Yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
fine. Thank you. So, so I was saying, like, if the threshold voltage is increases, then there may be some degradation in the drain current. So some researcher can consider this as a benefit, because if the drain current reduces, we can say that we have reduced this this leakage current, and we can say our device is the power efficient. But at the same time, if we need, because the threshold voltage has been increased, there may be some increment in this means there may be some increment in the delay. Delay will be increased. So the important conclusion here is, if your main concern is the power efficiency, in that case, NBTI can be considered as a benefit. But if you are talking about high performance, for the high performance applications where the delay should be as small as possible, the performance should be higher, we don't need to take care of how much power hungry it is. In that case, NBTI becomes the problem. So it is up to you for what application you want to design your circuit. And in that case, you can take it as an advantage or you can take it as a drawback. Okay, so this is up to you only. So yeah, here we have some data, like with respect to stress time, the leakage current is going to be reduces, and because of there may be some change in the threshold voltage. You may have observed here, like the change in the threshold voltage, the rate of change in the threshold voltage is higher during the initial phase of time as compared to the later time. Okay, so this is true. So the rate of change or the rate of recombination or rate of dangling bond defects is higher during the initial stress condition, and that becomes flattened if the stress time is increases. That is why we don't need to analyze your circuit for 10 years of stress. If you are analyzing your circuit for 3 years of stress, might be you can predict the performance of your circuit, because the most of the degradation happens during this time period only. Okay, so 3 years is sufficient to analyze or to predict the lifetime of your circuit, or to predict the lifetime of your circuit devices. Okay, so this is the important thing. Yeah, this also gives like how if you are changing the gate voltages, I just told you the stress depends on the negative gate to source voltage. If I'm changing the gate to source voltages, then the stress magnitude will also change. So if I am changing the gate voltage, if there is a very less gate voltage is 0, in that case there may be nominal difference due to NBTI. But if I have increased the gate voltage, there may be more deviation in the parameter due to the NBTI. So these are something which we need to know. Similarly, similar kind of graph can be made for, let us assume this graph is for room temperature, and for higher temperature might be the graph will look like this. Okay, so this could be the graph if you are operating our device for higher temperature. So the rate of change of dangling bond defect will become higher for the higher temperatures. Okay, so these are something which we should consider. Yeah, I was talking about the duty cycle. Okay, so here we have some data related to it. See, if I'm constantly applying the stress condition, which means the duty cycle beta is equal to 1, in that case, there may be maximum change in the threshold voltage. Okay, because the DC stress is giving the stress for all the time, there is no recovery. But as we are decreasing this beta or this duty cycle, the change in the threshold voltage with respect to time is also going to reduce. So if you can see this black one, this is for duty cycle 0.25. What it means, the effective change in the threshold voltage due to beta is equal to 0.25 is less as compared to the DC stress. So practically, the threshold voltage change is somewhat lower than the ideal conditions. Okay, so this is really very important to understand the things. Now, I was also saying, like, the effect of NBTI also depends on the technology node. So if you can see here, yeah, this is the simple thing which already we know how the leakage current is changing, how the delay is changing. But important figure is the second one. Here we can see, if we are talking about 130 nanometer technology generation, so after 10 years of stress, the threshold voltage shift will be around this one. But if we are moving to the next technology generation like 90 nanometer, 65 nanometer, 45, 32, then the effective change in the threshold voltage is also going to increase, and the effect of NBTI becomes more severe for the scaled technology. Similarly, due to the NBTI, the delay shift is also going to be increased with the advancement in the technology. So because of these two things, we can conclude that the effect of NBTI becomes more severe for the scaled technologies. Okay, so this is the thing. Now, let us move to some other things like, so till now we discussed about the bias temperature instability. Now let us talk about what this hot carrier injection is. Hot carrier injection and the final effect in the device performance is similar due to the BTI and due to the HCI. But what is the physical difference between what is the difference between the what I can say, the phenomena, what is happening behind the change? Okay, so the thing is, what happens if we are scaling down the technology, the charge carriers, they are accelerated in the lateral field, okay, and they get sufficient kinetic energy, okay, and because of this sufficient kinetic energy, they can be injected into the oxide one, and because of this injection, this may increase the threshold voltage of the device. If you can recall the bias temperature instability, the phenomena in the bias temperature instability was like there was some trapping of the charge carrier due to dangling bond defect, and because of that trapping, there was some increment in the threshold voltage. Was due to dangling bond defect, but here in the SCI, the phenomena is due to sufficient kinetic energy. Okay, and the charge carrier may penetrate into the oxide because the oxide thickness is very less, and because of that, that may increase the threshold voltage. Okay, so this is this kind of phenomena we call the hot carrier injection. If someone may ask the question, how we can analyze these parameters, how we can do research based on the HCI or based on the bias temperature instability. So the simple answer is, if you have the Synopsys HSpice tool with you for the circuit simulation, there is one model that we call MOSRA model, MOSFET reliability model. And after including that model card, you can predict the threshold voltage of the device with respect to time. Okay, and based on that, you can predict the circuit of the you can predict the lifetime of the circuit. So this kind of work can be done through the HSpice MOSRA model. Yes, the reliability model is also available in the Cadence, so you can also utilize that model for the prediction purpose, okay, and for analysis purpose. So yeah, definitely that is available, and you can do some research on this one. Okay. The next kind of the degradation phenomena is the time-dependent dielectric breakdown. Before going into this, let me explain something. What is the dielectric strength? Okay, so dielectric strength, whatever dielectric material we are using in between gate and the bulk material, which is SiO2, that may have some strength. And that dielectric strength means the maximum electric field that can sustain without losing the property of that dielectric material. That is known as the dielectric strength. So if we may have gone through this point related, means like we already studied about dielectric breakdown in the electromagnetic properties, right? So there, if we keep on applying the electric field, and if the dielectric material loses its property, we call that up to the electric field, the dielectric material is working like a dielectric. That is perfectly fine. But how much it can sustain, that is known as the dielectric strength. And the point at which it loses its property, we are calling that term is the dielectric breakdown. Okay. So now the question is, what is the time dependent dielectric material, dielectric breakdown? There are two kinds of dielectric breakdown. The first one is the hard dielectric breakdown, and the second one is the soft breakdown. Okay, hard breakdown means if forcefully we have applied sufficient electric field so that this dielectric material can lose its property. So this kind of the breakdown is known as hard breakdown. But on the other side, if our device is keep on operating for longer time period, there may be some initial defects. So initially, while fabricating the chip or while fabricating the device, we may have something like SiO2 and polysilicon, like MOS structure, something like that. There may be some initial defect, but that may not create the problem. Okay, but what happens with respect to time, the number of defects also increases, and because of this number of defects, they may create some leaky path. And if they are creating some leaky path, there may be direct current flow between the polysilicon and the silicon. And because there is a direct current flow between the polysilicon and the silicon, polysilicon means polysilicon is used as a gate material. So if there is a direct path between the gate and the bulk, in that case, we call it the time dependent dielectric breakdown. So it is a time dependent process. It is not necessary that we have, if we are operating our devices or the circuit, immediately it will break down. But with respect to time, the number of defects generations are more, and because of more generation with respect to time, at certain time period, there may be sufficient defects that can create some leaky path between the polysilicon and the silicon. Okay, and that will create some problem. Okay, so this is known as the time dependent dielectric breakdown. Now let us talk about this figure is really very important and really very interesting. I think I'm very slow. I have covered only 19 slides in 1 hour. Okay, so I think I need to become somewhat faster. Okay. See, till now I discussed about the NBTI, PBTI, SCI, and TDTP. All these phenomena are at the physical level, or at the SiO2 level, or at the material level. Okay, so or at the device level, or whatever material we are using. So these all phenomena that depends on what kind of material we are using, how we are fabricating each and every layer while fabricating the devices. So what happens? These phenomena like NBTI, PBTI, SCI, and TDTP, if I'm considering these phenomena at the device level like transistor, in that case, this reflect in terms of the threshold voltage, in terms of the transconductance, in terms of the drain current. So the same phenomena, same degradation phenomena affect the devices, that comes in the form of threshold voltage degradation, transconductance changes, and the drain current changes. But if I am using the same devices for the gate implementation, gate level implementation, even though phenomena is same, but the degradation or the effect on the gate level will be in terms of delay or in terms of power dissipation. Here I will not consider about the threshold voltage of the transistor. I will consider about how much delay degradation is there due to these phenomena, which are NBTI, PBTI, SCI, or TDDB. So at the gate level, I need to consider the delay and the power. Similarly, if I am going to somewhat higher hierarchy, which is the circuit level like SRAM. So SRAM, we know that in SRAM we have the static noise margin. So because of these degradations, noise margin can affect. I don't need to consider the, yeah, of course I need to consider the power and other things, but I don't need to consider the delay and the power of individual inverter which I have used while designing the SRAM. So at that time, I need to consider the SNM or the critical charges. Critical charge, what is this critical charge? This critical charge is the minimum charge that can be stored at the storage node. This critical charge play a major role, especially when we will talk about the soft error robustness. Okay, so keep this word in your mind, what this critical charge is, and I will explain in detail what this critical charge and how it can affect the soft error robustness. Okay, now the second hierarchy is, if I'm talking about the system level, in that case, these kind of problems, like this kind of circuit level problems like SNM degradation, critical charge degradation, that may create the problem in timing violation and the data corruptions. So even though the phenomena is same, but at each hierarchy, at each abstraction level, it affects differently, and we need to analyze the different parameter at different abstraction levels. Okay. So this was very important thing which we need to consider. Now, one very important thing, that is the bathtub curve. Okay, what this bathtub curve says? Bathtub curve says that if I am fabricating any chip, in that case, might be 100% chips cannot be successful. So that kind of defects are known as the infant mortality. Just after fabrication, might be some of the chip may not work. That may be infant mortality. Once might be the chip has started working, but during the initial phase, after some time of operation, might be that can fail. So if we are keep on operating the chips, might be the failure rate will keep on decreasing. So because it is going to work perfectly for the long run time period, so we can say that the failure rate is less. But what happens due to the temporal degradation, due to other phenomena, the failure rate again keep on increasing because of threshold voltage degradations. So the failure rate keep on increasing, and after certain time, might be that chip cannot work, and at this particular time, that becomes the wear out. Okay, so because this graph looks like a bathtub, that is why we are calling it the bathtub curve for the reliability analysis. Of course, this bathtub curve, the shape of the bathtub curve completely depends on what kind of technology we are using. So suppose if we are using the latest technology, might be the probability of trapping will be higher, and in that case, the failure or the normal operation time will be somewhat less, or the wear out will be the faster. So these all are the things which we need to consider. So the time period at which the chip will work perfectly, that is known as the normal operation time period. There may be some early failure. This wear out failure keep on increasing with respect to time. If there is some early failure, then it will keep on decreasing with respect to time, because if it is not failed due to early, that will not fail later on. But some other picture will come into the other thing will come into the picture, that is the wear out failure. And there are some constant or random failure which is unpredictable. Okay, so this curve is known as the bathtub curve. Now, this is all about the physical phenomena in the devices. Now let us talk about the soft error mechanism. What happens, as I was already discussing about what is the soft error. See, what happens if we are using our device or our circuit in a harsh environment? In that case, high energy particle can affect the performance of those chips. Okay, so what happens if high energy particle strikes on the bulk of this semiconductor material? They create some secondary electron hole pairs, and those secondary electron hole pairs are collected at the sensitive region of the device. Okay, and that is drain. And if that is collected at the drain side, that will create some glitch, some spike will come out. And because of that spike, there may be some degradation in the device performance. So here we can see here, if there is some high energy particle strikes, and because of that, at the drain side, there may be some sudden peak or sudden spike due to this high energy particle. And if it crosses the required current, which is flowing through that node or the storage node, in that case, there may be some data flipping. So the information will be flipped if I'm considering some storage element. Okay, so this kind of problems happens, especially if I'm talking about the soft error mechanisms. If I need to model these things, basically, if you can see here, this current pulse looks like this is a spike, but this is the double exponential current pulse. One exponential on this side and another exponential on this side. So generally, for the soft error analysis, the people consider the double exponential current pulse for the soft error robustness analysis. So you may ask one question, how we can simulate or how we can test our circuit for the soft error of robustness. The simple answer is just use double exponential current pulse at the node where you want to test the soft error robustness, and that will work. So suppose I have one inverter, and on this inverter, if the input is 0, so what happens if input is 0 and output is 1? In that case, due to the high energy particles, there may be some current injection at this storage node, and that storage node will shrink the charges stored at this node. So for short period of time, the output will become 0 from 1. So it will become 0, and by this one we can analyze the software robustness. Similarly for the other cases. So for that purpose, we generally consider the double exponential current pulse, and that is modeled by this equation. Okay. Now, one question may come from your side, like, if I'm analyzing the soft error robustness, how this soft error robustness can affect the performance of the circuit? What is the impact of soft error, this kind of soft error? Okay, so let us try to understand what is the impact of these transient faults. See, these are the soft, why we are calling them soft error? This is for certain period of time, not for the permanent. Okay, so and for certain period of time, it generates some spike, and again it becomes the it comes to its original value. So that is where we are calling it the transient fault. For example, I have one NAND gate, and in NAND gate, let us assume I have injected one current pulse over here. So let us assume the particle strike is something like this. Okay, so what it will do, this inverter will treat this pulse as a input pulse, and might be this inverter can generate a pulse train or the pulse. Even though there is no change in the input of this NAND gate, because of high energy particle strike at the output of this NAND gate, this can act as a pulse to this inverter 1, and this inverter will give like some low pulse, and again if I'm passing through some of the gates, that may act as a pulse that will be utilized, that can be act as an input signal to some of the flip-flops or some of the storage element. And if it is something like that, if this pulse is coming at the time when the clock pulse is changing from low to high, in that case this D flip-flop, the information in this D flip-flop may change. And this kind of problem is known as the soft error. That can change the information which is stored in the D flip-flop. Ideally, there should be no change, even though because there is no change in the inputs. So we are assuming that there should be no change in the D flip-flop data. But because of this pulse strike, that data has been changed, because this can act as a pulse train. Okay, so this is one of the effect. Second effect is on the delay. How it can affect the delay? Initially, suppose I have one inverter, something like that, and let us assume I am changing the input from high to low, Okay. So in that case, if I'm changing high to low, this will change from low to high. Again, this inverter will change from low to high to low and low to high, something like that. Okay. If there is no current pulse, in that case, whatever the change is there in the input, at the input side, like high to low, that will be reflected at the VO2, and the same thing will be inverted at the VO3. But what happens during transition, if high energy particle strikes, then what it will do? Let us try to understand that one. Initially, I was assuming the VO1 is the normal one. So see, here I have given like input from high to low, the output will change from low to high after certain delay. Okay, and VO1 will become high to low and VO3 will become low to high. Now see here, VO1 is changing from low to high in the normal condition. But during transition, if at this time one particle strike at the output of this node, that will pull down the VO1 to again to the low side for some period of time. And I just already told you this strike is for some small period of time, and after that it can be recovered or it can be at its original value. So this will take it down, and again, because we have already applied input which is high to low, so the output will change from low to high, something like that. So ideally we can receive output high at this time period, but we are receiving output at this time period because of this particle strike. So there could be some delay at the output. So this is the effect of transient fault in the delay of circuit. Okay, so this is how that can affect. So many researchers can do are doing for the soft error tolerant circuit designing. Soft error tolerance means what? If somehow they can increase the critical charge of the storage node where we are analyzing these things, then we can say that the soft error, we have improved the robustness. Okay, so this is how it can be done. Yeah, there are some masking scheme that could be masked. So if there are some pulse are coming which are not required by the circuit, that can be masked. So there are three techniques like electrical masking, logical masking, and timing masking. I'm not discussing because some of the important thing will be left if I will discuss these things. So I don't want to waste time here. Yeah, let me take a brief overlook how it can be masked. So let us talk about the logical masking. So we know that the property of NAND gate is if one of the input is logic low, and if there is some change in the other input from low to high or high to low, so it will reflect at the output side. But if I have kept one of the input of NAND gate to the logic low, even though there is some change in the another input or other input, it will not reflect at the output side. So by this way, we can mask this one. So we can keep the sum of the gates, something like that, which can act as a masking one. Okay. So whenever we need data, we can unmask it. And whenever we don't need to change anything, we can mask it. So by masking, even though if there is some change in the previous circuit, that will not affect to the end part. So by this way, we can do something. Okay. Other thing can also be like electrical masking and something. Just please go through it, and it's very easy. So I'm not taking too much time to explain this thing, because I just want to take some time to explain the hardware security issues, which are really very important. Okay. Yeah, some question may ask, like till now, if we can consider, we discussed two things. The first thing is the bias temperature instability, and the second thing is the soft error. Okay, so someone can ask whether there is any relation between the soft error and the bias temperature instability. So the next slide will answer your question. Okay, see here. If we have a device without any effect of NBTI, and if the soft error upset probability is, let us assume, the 50%. Now, what will happen if the device is under stress and there is some change in the threshold voltage due to that negative bias temperature instability? So if there is some change, the soft error probability is going to increase. What does it mean? It means that if any of the circuit has more effect of NBTI, we can also say that that circuit has more effect of soft error as well. In other words, what we can say, if we can design some circuit which is tolerant to NBTI, we can also claim that that circuit is tolerant to soft error. Okay, so these two are dependent parameters. So we can say in other way. One may ask the question, how it is going to be increased? How the soft error probability is going to increase? Yes, I am just showing you the picture that it is going to increase. But what is the reason behind this? The reason is, as we know that if I am increasing the threshold, if there is some impact of NBTI in the device, threshold voltage is going to increase. If the threshold voltage is going to increase, the current flowing through the device will also reduce. If the current flow through the device is reducing, what does it mean? Current is nothing but if we can integrate a number of charge for some time period, that gives you the current. The flow rate of flow of charge is known as current, right? So if there is less current flow, then the rate of flow of charges will be less. So the charges is less, what it means, the critical charge will reduce. And if the critical charge will reduce, what it means, the soft error probability will be higher. So this is how we can define this thing. So the higher effect of NBTI will have more soft error probability or higher soft error probability. Okay. To demonstrate this, we can have an example. If I am considering the CMOS inverter for the different stage time, so the critical charge at stage time 0, let us assume it is like 0.770 femtocoulombs, then it is keep on decreasing if the stage time is increasing. So what does it indicate? It indicates that due to NBTI, if the critical due to NBTI, if the threshold voltage is changing, the critical charge will also reduce, means the soft error probability on this inverter will also increase. Okay, so there are two kind of research group. One research group is related to the BTI, and the second research group is related to the soft error. And some of the research group who are common in both, like they are considering the BTI as well as soft error for the better picture. Okay, so you can think of any of the domain and you can start working on it. Okay, how to do that? Might be you can refer some of my paper, and that may help you in this regard, how to analyze the things, how to find the critical charges and other things. So that may help you. Okay, so this was the effect of NBTI on the soft error. Now so till now what we discussed the various reliability issues in the circuits, devices, and the systems. Now let us talk about some hardware security primitives. So what this hardware security primitive is? If I'm talking about the security, so as I already told you, the security becomes the integral part of any of the system, because we are doing we are transmitting the data every day, all the times, and that data must be secure. And even at the computational side, that must be secure. No one can trap the data, no one can hack the data. So the security becomes one of the primary concern, especially at this era. Okay, so to this end, some of the security features may be included in the circuit or the devices or in the systems, and that is the physically unclonable function. The second could be like true random number generator. Third one could be the counterfeit electronics. We need to avoid this counterfeiting. And the last one is the hardware trojans. Okay, so these last two are the real problem, and that we need to avoid by the proper algorithm, proper way, or proper method. Whereas the first and the second one are the way how we can improve the security of the circuits or the systems. Okay, so let us discuss one by one what this physical unclonable function is, what this TRNG is, what is the counterfeiting, what is the hardware trojan, and how they can impact. Okay, let me say it again. PUF and the TRNG are some security circuit that is utilized to enhance the security in the cryptography. Okay, and the counterfeiting and the hardware trojan are the serious concern or the trust concern which you need to take care of. What these things are, I will explain. And this is really very interesting. After listening these terms, might be you'll be surprised how it can happen and how the security can be trapped. Okay, so let us start with the physically unclonable function. Okay, what this physical unclonable function is? The physical unclonable function is the cryptographically secure one-way function that generates a digital output for a given digital input without revealing any of the predictability. Okay, for example, I have one chip, I have authenticated one IC. The input of that circuit or that PUF circuit is known as challenge, and the output of that circuit is known as the responses. Okay, so this challenge response pair is utilized to authenticate the user. How it can do? Suppose I have some authentic IC and I have some challenges. So these challenges is given by user, and that responses is generated based on the property of this PUF. What kind of PUF I have used? That PUF will generate some response. Okay, now we will what it do? If the same kind of device is used by the trusted one, or the same kind of chip is used by the trusted purpose, they may have the challenge response pair. So they may have the things like challenges, but what kind of response this is giving and what response the original one got, we need to compare. If both the ICs are giving the equal responses, what it means? It means that it is authentic. But if the responses are not good, then we can say that they are not the authentic one. So this is how it could be done. One very important thing, how the PUF can be designed. One question may come from your side. How the PUF can be designed? PUF can be anything. It could be like the delay-based PUF. It could be the any kind of, means there are n number of PUF that can be ring oscillator-based PUF, some power-based PUF. So these are the way how you can design the PUF. PUF is nothing but it is the simple circuit like an ordinary, like ring oscillator, D flip-flop, some other circuits, and that can use as a PUF for the authentication purpose. Okay, so this is one of the really hot topic in the security research, where the people can design the various PUF and for the authentication purpose or for the security purpose. If you're talking about the PUF, there could be many parameters that need to be analyzed. What those parameters are? The humming distance is one of the parameter. Okay, humming distance is the how many change in the input bits and the output bit is there. So humming distance means, suppose I have input like this and output like this. So how many bits are changed? Okay, so that is we call the weight. So how many percentage of bits are changed, that we call the humming distance. Okay, it could be like inter-die or intra-die. So I'm not going into detail of inter-die humming distances, but I recommend you to go through the some of the literature where you can understand what the humming distance is, how we can calculate the inter-die humming distance and intra-die humming distance. Yes, inter-die and intra-die is same like what we discussed in the inter-die and intra-die process variations. Before going into the other points, let me explain how this PUF works. As we know that if I'm fabricating any chip, we cannot make two transistors or two circuits identical. in any of the condition, we cannot make two devices identical. Okay, if you are considering the reliability term, so this is the really problem. Okay, so if there is some process variation, two devices are not working identical, so this is really a serious reliability concern, where the reliability researcher will do something like where they can avoid this mismatch. But the problem which reliability researcher faces, that was utilized by the security researchers, and that this mismatch in the process parameter, that can be utilized for challenge and response pair generation. How it can be done? Because if the two different, suppose I'm designing two SRAM cell, and because the both, if I'm fabricating the chip, so both the SRAM cell is not necessary that all the parameters of both SRAM cell will be same, because during fabrication there may be some mismatch in some of the parameter. So what will happen? There may be some process differences, and if there is some process differences, the response which I will receive from the first SRAM cell will not be same as the response in the second SRAM cell. And if it is something like that, that we can use it as a security application, because the same responses cannot be cloned. So that is why we are calling it physically unclonable function. Okay, so this is all about the physical unclonable function. We can find some of the research in my group related to this PUF, and you can go through it and you can find something new, how it can be done, how it can be implemented by using various circuits. Okay, so this was the PUF. Now, what happens in the cryptography applications? What we do, if suppose I'm sending some data, and at the same time I need to send some security key as well. So that security key will be sent through the information, and if the recipient have the same security key, then that data will be that can be opened. But if the security key is mismatched, in that case no one can hack the data. So the true random generator is the basically application of physically unclonable function that can utilize for the true random number generation, and that true random number generation can be used as a key that is used for the authentication one. The important thing to understand here is that true random number generator utilizes the noise inside the devices, internal noises, or what kind of noises, like random telegraph noises or other flicker noises, short noises, thermal noises. These kind of noises are basically utilized to create the truly random number generator. If more random noise is present in the device, this is, if we are talking about a reliability perspective, this is really a serious problem. But if you are talking about a security perspective, this becomes the benefit. Okay, so see, if you are merging the reliability and security both, you need to come up with some trade-off between reliability and the security. Whereas if you are considering only the reliability side, so these kind of noises must be avoided. If you're talking about the security side, this kind of noises must be present. Okay, so this is really very funny thing, or really very interesting thing. There must be trade-off between the security and the reliability. So yeah, I will go through one of the slide where you can have some better picture about it, how it can, what kind of the reliability concern can be utilized for the security and the reliability purposes. Okay, so if it is not true random, so that can be predictable. So let us assume some of the keys are repeating again and again. So the hacker can predict, okay, this could be the key, and might be they can access the data. So the number should be the truly random, and the noises are utilized for this purpose. Okay. Now let us talk about the counterfeiting. This is really very serious concern nowadays. What this counterfeiting is? If I'm talking about the counterfeiting, suppose suppose I have the fresh IC with us, and I'm using all those IC for some of the applications for like aircraft or something like missiles and here and there. Might be if I have a motherboard and that motherboard get failed, right, in broken, but some of the part in that motherboard is still live, they are still working. So what they do, we generally throw all those chip or those boards into the waste, e-waste. So what they do, the people start doing finding the e-waste, and they start finding the components which are live, and they can process it again, and then again that they float into the market for reselling purpose. Okay, even though the item was used before in some of the application, but because it was not dead, so that can be processed, and the people started doing the reselling of those things. So this is the really a serious concern, and this kind of concern is known as the counterfeiting. Okay, so the counterfeiting is a serious concern. What are the different kind of counterfeiting? The counterfeiting could be like, I will explain this later. The counterfeiting could be like the recycling. It could be like remark. So suppose someone had designed, and by removing the upper marking, they can remark with the different name or the different branding. This is also one kind of the counterfeiting. Suppose some of the foundry has given contract to fabricate, let us assume 1 million transistor, but the fabricating company has the chip manufacturing company has fabricated more than the contract, that is overproduced. So that overproduced chip can be resell here and there without information to the actual actual design who have designed the chip. So this is also one kind of the counterfeiting that we call it like overproduced. Okay, something like other could be cloned one. So at some instant might be some people have cloned the same IC and they are fabricating from the different foundry. So this is also one kind of counterfeiting. Some kind of tamper can be done inside the chip. So this is also the counterfeiting. So there are various ways of the counterfeiting, and this is really a serious issue. Out of these things, most of the thing like the recycling or the recycling of the chip has the maximum component of the counterfeiting. So the most of the things are recycled. If you are considering the counterfeiting, the most of the percentage is covered by the recycling one, which I have just shown in this diagram. Okay, yeah. Again, whatever I told you, like during the design time, that can be cloned, that can be tempered. This is also one kind of the counterfeiting. During fabrication, if the manufacturing industry has fabricated overproduction is there, then that is also one kind of counterfeiting. During the assembly, there could be some tampering and something like that. This is also counterfeiting. While distribution, they have not distributed the original one, they have distributed the recycled one. So this is also one kind of counterfeiting. So the counterfeiting can happen at any stage of the time, while from the designing to the supply one. Okay, so the counterfeiting is possible. But as I told you, counterfeiting can be like can be judged or can be predicted how it could be done. So as I told you, the recycled one is the maximum portion in the counterfeiting, right? So before I just told you, due to NBTI, the threshold voltage of the transistor increases. Okay, so here I'm giving you some research direction related to the counterfeiting. Okay, how? So let us see. Suppose I have already studied, means I have explained how this NBTI affect the threshold voltage of the devices. Okay, and subsequently it will affect the threshold voltage of the chip. So what happens if any of the chip is in the working for the longer time period? Let us assume for 3 years. So because of NBTI, there may be some permanent trapping, permanent shift in the threshold voltage. Okay, so the threshold voltage of that chip is increased. So and effectively the leakage current is reduced. So what will happen? How to means find whether the chip is recycled one or the original one? Because we already have the new chip and we have some recycled chip, and we know that recycled chip have some different property than the original one. Why the recycled one has a different property? Because of this NBTI effect. There may be some permanent shift in the threshold voltage, and because of that there may be some change in the current properties or the delay property. So if somehow I can measure the current in the recycled IC and measure the current in the original or the fresh IC, there will be some difference in these two currents. And if there is some difference, we can say that the IC is recycled one, the counterfeit IC is it is. So this is one of the example how we can find the recycled ICs. So in literature, if you can go through it, you will find a various way to check the counterfeit ICs. So here we can have some research direction. So important thing is here we can club the reliability and the security as well. How it can be done? As I told you, NBTI is a reliability concern. NBTI is a problem, especially if you are talking about the reliability, but that can be utilized to detect the recycled IC. Okay, so here we can utilize that problem as a benefit. So this is really a very interesting thing and really very funny thing. Okay, so this is all about the counterfeiting. One very important thing is the hardware Trojan. What is this hardware Trojan and how it can affect the hardware? Hardware means the chip. Okay. So what happens? See, the hardware Trojan is the simplest form of an unauthorized circuitry that can be inserted into the original chip. Okay. At each instant of time. So it can be done at any stages. Okay. So some unauthorized section, if I have added into the chip, in that case, the hardware Trojan will be there. Okay. So see, suppose I have some idea, some design idea. This is only the trusted one, right? Now, while making the specification, might be someone has done intentional mistakes while framing the specification. So this can become the one of the part of hardware Trojan. So the user was expecting like our design will work like this, but due to intentional mistakes while making the specification, might be the chip will not work as per the idea. Okay, so here we can say it like intentional mistake. The second thing could be like if I have designed like hardware description languages, I have written the code. So there may be malicious design tampering file that may be included in that SDL. So that can also create the hardware intrusion. There may be some malicious IP core as well. So what this IP core is? IP core is nothing but this is the reusable unit of logic, cell or the layout design, and that is the IP of any of the party. And that layout or that section of the chip that can be utilized directly for the synthesis purpose. So here there may be some problem. While synthesis, there may be some manipulated tool that is utilized for the synthesis. There we can have some hardware intrusion. While mapping, we can have some hardware intrusion. While pressing and routing, we can have some hardware intrusion. If I'm using the FPGA, in that case, we can tamper the file which we are using for the configuration. We can manipulate some loader at the loader side, at the backdoor side. So there may be any stages where we can insert some set of things, or we can manipulate the IC configurations. So these all we call them hardware Trojan. Similarly, for the ASIC side, we can have the hardware layout and we have tempered somehow the layout, and that is also the part of hardware Trojan. Manipulated design is there while fabricating, while sending to the foundry. So that can also be done. That can also create some hardware intrusion. Attack on IC can also be one of the reasons. So these are some of the way where the hardware Trojan can be inserted inside the chip before fabrication. Okay, so these are the problems and that need to be accessed. To go into the more detail, suppose I am fabricating the chip like this. Somehow while designing, someone has added one extra wire over here from here to there. So this extra wire may create some different property. So that could be done. Some wire they have connected here and there. This was not expected, but they have connected while designing the things, while fabricating at any of the stages. Might be they can add some extra transistors that can track some of the data and that can send it to some other places. Okay, so by this way we can have something. They can cut some of the connections, some of the wires as well for the tampering purpose. So these are the part of the hardware Trojan and that need to be avoided. Okay, so these all are the security perspective which we need to consider. Okay, so till now I discussed what are the different reliability issues, different hardware security issues. Now let us try to see what are the different challenges, especially if we are talking about the reliability and the security. So let us first start with the challenges with the reliability. So basically, as per the latest ITRS report, the reliability is divided into two categories. The first category is the near-term reliability issues, and the second category is the long-term reliability issues. So near-term reliability issues which we are currently dealing with, like up to 2022, and after that, some long-term reliability issues must be considered. So there are huge scope in the reliability research, even now, even in the future. So you can think of any of the domain, any of the reliability domain where you can work, and still there is a scope, huge scope. Okay, so if I'm talking about the near-term reliability issues, in that case, like TDDB, BTI, SCI, random telegraph noises in the non-planar devices is still in the scope. What is this one? The model which has been used for this, MOSFET models, which I am saying like there is some Modra model present in the HSpice, that is for the bulk one. But we need to explore these kind of degradation phenomena for non-planar devices as well, like TFET, FinFET, and something like that. So that need to be explored. Gate to contact breakdown is also one of the serious concern, reliability concern that need to be considered. Okay, so here the research can be done. The increasing statistical variation of intrinsic failure in the non-planar devices as well. Okay, and 3D interconnect becomes also one of the reliability concern, especially if I'm talking about the 3D kind of ICs, and reduced reliability margin drive, and that need to be improved at the circuit level. So these are some of the issues that need to be resolved at the near term. But there may be some long-term reliability concerns as well. See, currently we are, if I'm considering the near term, I am targeting about the devices, circuits, only circuit and devices only. But if I am using the advanced materials, so the reliability of those advanced materials we also need to be taken care of. Okay, so in the long term, we need to understand the reliability mechanism of new material and the new structure which we are using for the development of ICs or the new ICs. Okay, and till now the reliability has been considered at the circuit level only, but we also need in the long term, we also need to consider the reliability at the system level. Currently, the reliability at the system means the device level reliability effect is more, but as we are increasing the abstraction, the effect becomes less. But in the long term, that effects will be severe at the system level as well. So we need to take care of this thing as well. Mure-induced soft error rate becomes also one of the reliability concerns, especially if we are talking about the harsh environment reliabilities. Okay, so this is all about the reliability research challenges. Let us talk about the security research challenges. So see, as I told you, there is some common in between the security and the reliability. So if I'm considering the security reliability, the phenomena may be the problematic. But if I'm considering for the security purpose, the same phenomena can be the beneficial. So here I have listed out some of the things, like if I have the process variation. So for the normal logic designing, it is not recommended to have any process variation. But for the PUF designing, for the TRNG designing, the process variation is very good, and that can give you the unique key. Okay, so for the logic designing, this is the problematic. But for the PUF and the TRNG, this is the advantage. Similarly, the noise is not acceptable in any of the things. But for the true random number generation, the noise play a major role to create the really true random number. So that becomes one of the benefits, especially if I'm talking about the TRNG. Similarly, temperature variation should not be present in any of the things. Yes, while counterfeiting, I just told you how we can measure the counterfeit IC or the recycled IC. So the aging effect can act as a benefit for that one. Okay, so these are some of the list where some of the problems can be utilized as a benefit if I'm considering the security one. Yeah, the same table has been replicated in another way. Like if I'm talking about the resilient designs, so we need to consider the voltage and temperature variation. I need to consider the soft error, aging effects, and these all comes under the security constraints. But the process variation does not consider it does not comes under the security concern, because if more process variation is there, better security will be there. But still, this process variation is the reliability concern. Okay, so we need to consider what are the parameters which fall under the security and what are the reliability parameters which fall under the reliability concerns. Okay, so this is all about the reliability resource concerns. Thank you so much. So that's the end of the talk. Still, we have some time. How much time we have? Yeah, 15-minute time we have. So in case you have any doubt, so you can ask me the questions.
Now
So participants can ask questions.
Sir, which tool is more suitable for this reliability, like soft error and this? You talk some HSpice, some model.
If you are considering the bias temperature instability and the HCI, the HSpice Mozilla model is good. It is very well mature model, because it was very less time, so I was not able to explain which kind of model it has been used. But as you asked the question, the reaction diffusion model is used for the Mozilla one. So this is very mature model. Basically, for the BTI prediction, bias temperature instability, there are two models. The first one is the reaction diffusion model, and the second one is trapping model. Reaction diffusion model was developed by this Professor Souvik Mahapatra from the IIT Bombay. They are working on this model, and this is very mature model, and that has been implemented in the HSpice. The second model is the trapped repap model, and still it is in progress. That is, and the trapping model is done by the Tibor Grosser Institute for Microelectronics, TU Wien, Austria, from where I did my postdoc. So they are working on the trapping model. But for now, you can use RD model in the HSpice model.
Okay, so one more question. Like in soft error, you've shown like suppose in the space environment, any particle is striking.
Yes,
There is some disturbance. Okay. So like suppose we want to do the simulation in the tool. So how we can generate this disturbance?
Yeah, so I just told you, you need to find out the most sensitive node in the circuit.
Yes.
Like suppose you are considering the SRAM cell. I'm taking the simplest example. In the SRAM cell, we have two storage nodes. Like, okay, so in both the storage nodes are the most sensitive node in the SRAM. So there you need to inject double exponential current pulse so that you can change the logic value which is stored. I have not included in this slide. Let me check whether I have anything. So because I was not, because the time was very less. So Let me check it is available here or not. Are you seeing this slide? Which one slide you are seeing? Main one?
Yes, yes. This soft error now it's changed.
Yeah, it is changing, right? Okay, so maybe I have. Yeah, here it is. Perfect. Okay, so let me make it full screen. So, are you seeing this soft error analysis in combinational circuit?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. So, see, let me first explain how to do in the sequential circuit. So, in the sequential circuit, like simplest example is the SRAM one. Okay, and I just told you we need to use the double exponential current pulse. So, what I need to do? Suppose I have this SRAM cell where we have connected back-to-back inverter and we have two storage node Q and QB. Perfect. What I need to do, I need to inject one current pulse at one of the storage node. So suppose I have injected a current pulse at QB. So and which is the double exponential, which you can see like this. Okay. So initially I am considering the Q is at logic low and QB is at logic high. Okay. And I want to make this QB at logic low because of the high energy particles. So what I will do, I will inject a current pulse in the opposite direction. So what it will do, this current pulse will shrink the charge from this QB, and that will, the voltage at QB will start decreasing. And at the same time, because we have connected back-to-back inverter, QB voltage or the Q voltage will start increasing. Initially it was 0 and it will start increasing. At certain time, both the voltage level will cross to each other, and after certain time they will flip. Okay, so initially the QB was 1 and after certain time QB will become 0 and vice versa. So the time at which both the voltages are crossing to each other, we will consider it as a critical time. And what I will do, I will integrate the current pulse, whatever we have injected at a sensitive node, from 0 time to this time at which both are crossing to each other. And after that, I will get the critical charge. So if we have two SRAM cell, in one SRAM cell, if the critical charge is, let us assume 5 femtocoulombs, and in another SRAM cell, if the critical charge is 6 femtocoulombs, so we can say that the circuit which have the critical charge 6 femtocoulomb has better soft error robustness. Okay, so this is how we used to predict.
Okay, so the soft error we are expressing in terms of these charges.
Charges, yes, charges. So I'm just discussing the single node offset. The same thing can be extended for the multiple node. If we have, so you can inject the current pulses at the multiple nodes simultaneously, and that is considered as a multiple node offset. Okay, so what I explained, that is the single node offset.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Sir, generally, what will be the maximum lattice temperature in terms of reliability of a device, sir?
See, it completely depends on the application at which we are using that IC. So suppose if I'm using for at home, the temperature will be at the room temperature, and at that time the effect of NBTI will be very less. But due to, as I told you, if there is some switching probability is higher, then the hot spot will be created, temperature of that IC will increase, and if the temperature of that IC will increase, the effect of NBTI will also increase. So we cannot say that what is the optimum value. Simple thing is, lower the temperature, less the effect of NBTI. Higher the temperature, more the effect of NBTI. So this is the simple phenomenon.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So is there any other participants who wants to ask question? Any query? Okay. So thank you so much, sir, for this knowledgeable and informative talk on reliability and security issues in VLSI circuit and system.
Okay,
The energy with The energy with which you have delivered the talk was outstanding, and we wholeheartedly thank you for this wonderful talk. So the key points of the talks are, so the talk started with a discussion on key issue of technology scaling, that is excessive leakage power and device reliability. And we have also covered 3 edges of circuit and system resilience, that is integrity, availability, and confidentiality. You have also covered or discussed various reliability failure mechanism. And this particular talk also covered some aspects of security issues by discussing how security can be improved. And you have also covered the scope for the research in the area for near term and also for the long term. Overall, the lecture was very engaging and interesting. Hope it would have helped many participants to clear their doubt and selecting the research area for their future research. So with this word, I once again want to thank Dr. Ambika Prasad Saha for such an interesting talk on reliability and security issue in VLSI circuit and systems. Thank you, sir, for giving your precious time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
We'll be happy to have you on our future program also. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for
Thank you
accepting
so
our
much.
invitation.
Thank you so much.
joining with
Thank you
us.
for inviting.
Thank you.
Okay, see you.
Okay, sir. So now, as we have reached to the end of this short-term training program, so it is a time for a valedictory ceremony of